Hello, everyone. I'm delighted to introduce Dr. Farhad Pirouzmand, who's our honored guest today. He is the head of the Division of Neurosurgery at Sunnybrook Hospital, and alongside his very busy clinical practice, he also runs a lot of clinical trials. Dr. Pirouzmand, welcome. How are you?
Well, thank you. How are you?
Good. Thank you. So why don't you start off by telling us about yourself, but more specifically, why you got interested in clinical trials and how you come up with all these brilliant questions?
First of all, I'm not really expert in clinical trials, but I can share some of my experiences with you and others. I think to answer your questions, we as a clinician are always seeking to have medical evidence to guide us to do anything we do for our patient every day. And I think fundamentally our science, our medicine is different than other logical science, such as math, that you can't just think that this is the right approach. You also need the experience to prove that what you think it's the right thing for the patient. So we really need to have experience and then have done it on the patients and see the result. And then based on that, learn this is good or not good. We can't just rely on our hypothetical thinking of what's good for the patient. So evidence-based medicine is the best way we can have a medical care for our patients. So it comes from what we learn from our experience with patients. So we are working with them, we're working for them, and they actually contribute to what we understand to care for the next group of patients. That's how the medicine evolves. It's not coming that we can read the books and we learn it and that's what it is. It's evolving based on the patient's input and patient's evidence.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I think it is coming from a lot of, like any other science, we need a lot of interdisciplinary help. It comes from the science, mathematics, biostatistics, some of the engineering techniques to learn how do we learn from the things that these evidence and experience of the patients, how do we make them more organized and formulates the plan or the data from them. So this is, it's a lot of science behind this. How do we get the experience, the outcome, and then there are many ways of collecting the evidence. Some of it just comes from us. Like I see a lot of people have been practicing for close to 20 years. So I've learned a lot of things by seeing patients and doing things from them. But also a lot of more experienced surgeons and other colleagues have done a lot of things in different areas. So collecting these evidence, the expert evidence, it will produce a good guide for us, at least as a basis for our practice, for a lot of things. But also we can do more proper way of studying patients, which called observational. We just observe them, what they do in over a few months or a few years, and then see what the results of our treatment are in a more organized fashion, and then learn from them. Or we can do what we call experimental study. We can do experiment, but in a sense, it's a more of the statistical term, not really to test them on something. And those are the ones that we can give us the best result, experimental studies. The gold standard, the summit of all of these evidence comes from randomized trial, which is essentially what I really like, and most researchers are interested in. It delivers the highest level of evidence, and the reason is because it removes our biases, either the one that we as a person have some biases and selections that we want to do, or we want something works or not work, and also some of the things that we don't know that may affect the outcome that we want. And when we randomly assign patients, then it will remove these two. Just for the audience, when it's a randomized trial is performed, the subjects are divided into two groups. They are randomly assigned to a group we call experimental, which the treatment that we want to seek the result of or test it. It's called experimental group. And another random group is the one that we use called conventional treatment, which could be any treatment, could be operation, could be drug or different drugs or no treatment. When we do this randomly assigning patients to the two groups, we remove every biases which we may have or some other factors may affect, because they are different, randomly divided into different groups. So therefore the results become quite clean, and we understand, we learn from them how they impact the patients. I think because they're randomized trials and they're very, very hard to do, it's very important for us to select the questions wisely, because they're costly, they take a lot of time. So we can't just go around, and it's almost like you're investing in a large investment, sum of investment by a business company or a government. You do a lot of legwork to make sure the investment, when you do it, will pay off. So you want to have a proper questions that has an impact on the patient care. You may change the patient treatment or management or outcome significantly. So therefore it worth to invest to do a randomized trial. So question has to be really impactful for patient or even policymaker. The hospitals or the governments, they have to, if it's going to make a huge impact on them, how to prevent the disease or how to support paying for a drug, it will be worthwhile. And also it has to be feasible. You can't have any questions. If you have a disease that is very rare, or it takes a long time to follow, 10 years, 20 years, or it's very costly, it cannot be done. It's maybe ideologically you want to do it, but it practically cannot be done. And the third thing, I think when you want to do it, it has to be ethical. Patients has to be center of it. Patients are the one that we are actually learning from. So it has to be safe and has to be and ethical in a way. They have to have their privacy, and data shouldn't be shared. So they have to be comfortable and they have to be feeling safe when they are participating in the study. I think these are the three main things when you set up a question, the trial. There are other things, but these are important.
Absolutely. And I think one of the key ingredients to being a good researcher as a clinician is to be astute and pay attention to your day-to-day practice and learn from, okay, this was a challenging question, and I feel like I don't have good evidence. I wonder if we do this versus that will provide us good evidence. And I remember from my training, you're a very astute clinician. And another point I was going to say is that in medicine, like cardiology, diabetes, all those fields, it is much easier to conduct a trial. Not that it's very easy at all, but then surgical, right? So neurosurgery suffers a little bit from evidence-based medicine completeness, because our pathologies are rare, they're more acute. So it's hard to, have the chance to randomize the patients to treatment A versus B. But you've been very creative in the questions you've developed, and I know you have a variety of trials that you're running. What is the latest on all the trials that you're running?
First of all, I agree. I think surgical trials are by nature a bit more difficult. But having said that, randomized trial is always difficult, and then much harder than we think as a clinician and even researcher, unless you do it. And I've come up to understand, appreciate that the hard work has been done for us to have certain evidence which we have now and use it for our patients. And that has been a very enlightening experience for me. But for us, I think we do some observational studies, but I think the more of the multi-center randomized trial, we are currently doing 3 trials at Sunnybrook. One is the largest one, which is called PROTEST. Just in short, it's in a study in a patient with a significant traumatic brain injury. When they come to the ICU, we want to know what's the best mechanism to prevent blood clot formation in their legs or heart or the lung while they are lying in bed, because they already have brain injury, they have a breathing tube, they're on a ventilator, they don't move, and they also have bleeding in the brain. We compare a different mechanism of preventing a blood clot, and we're hoping to have some better answer for the clinician, the intensivist, and a better care for patients at the end. So this is one of those things. The question is important because everybody is asking what's the best way to prevent blood clot while we're not causing more bleeding in the brain when they are already they have a bleeding in the brain because of the accident. So that's the question. That's one of the. The second one is a surgical trial, which you pointed out is a bit it was a bit harder for us to set it up, but it is it's about a group related to a group of patients that have a brain cancer. It's called glioma, which is a quite aggressive disease. And we want to compare two different surgical techniques to see if either of them has any advantage in terms of giving the patient longer life expectancy or better quality of life in the long term, without causing any harm. Obviously, the center of all the trial is we don't want to harm. Is there anything we can do to make them better? It's called superiority trial. And the third one, which is a newer one, is called attached trial. We want to know when is the best timing to restart blood thinner in a group of patients that are already on blood thinner to prevent a stroke for a special heart condition. And they come to the hospital because they have suffered from a new brain bleeding, could be mostly because of trauma. So when they come for that bleeding, we always obviously stop the blood thinner, and they're not protected to have a stroke because they have a heart condition that can cause stroke, but we can't give them blood thinner. They already have bleeding in the brain. Mm-hmm. Nobody knows, none of the clinician knows when is the best time to restart a blood thinner. We obviously want to start it soon, but we don't want to start also causing bleeding for the brain. And that question is the center of our third trial is called attached trial, which is a multi-centric.
Yeah, I must say you're very good at also coming up with short names for the trials: PROTEST trial, attached trial, but also the glioma trial, the G-Summit, glioma supramarginal incision trial. A very cool name. As we were setting this up, some of the potential candidate surgeons who could be participating as our investigative surgeons raised the question, okay, why should we investigate? Because we're to explain to the audience, we're trying to see if taking all of the visible portion of the tumor is good enough, or should we extend the margins of the resection, because we know these are very infiltrative tumors. So everyone is asking, many people are asking, why wouldn't I take more when I can? So why do you think it's so important, and I think you alluded to this in the beginning, to actually do a study to answer this question?
We're going back to how we select our question. This is obviously a very aggressive tumor, and we really, based on the best clinical evidence that we have, we really haven't been able to impact the patient's survival or quality in the past maybe 10, 15 years, or maybe a bit too harsh on it. But there has been some advance in the genetic markers to give us some indication of how these patients behave or respond to certain treatment, which already has been established for a decade or so. But there has been not much of advancement in their care. So this is a very I think from scientifically speaking, underserviced group of patients. So we need to find something. And one of the aspects of the treatment has been operation. And as you said, there's always a debate when you have a patient with a brain tumor. Maybe if you remove more of what we think is a tumor, or maybe even beyond what we think is a tumor on the brain, as long as we think it's safe for a patient, obviously, maybe it's better for the patient. Maybe they can survive longer. Maybe they can respond better to the other treatment, but nobody knows. And that's the fundamental things for the randomized trial. The question is important, but it also has to be a question that has no clear answer. We as a surgeon or any other specialty, we have our own preferences, the way we think, the way we have been trained. So when we see a patient, I may be more aggressive in terms of doing certain things. And for the next patient, I may have some biases and say, well, I'm not going to be aggressive in this specific patient. So these are called, known and unknown biases, which we all have in our patient care. And because everybody does their own practice, and we cannot use individual practices when it's like so muddled and not clean, to see if one approach is better than the other one. And that's why randomized trial, by having a more structured group of patients that you can choose. You define the patients, and they are randomly assigned to do groups, surgery, which is standardized, so as much as possible, and the outcome, which are very clear. So if you have these three elements that are randomly assigned to two groups, then we can have a proper answer, and then that can help the patient. This is the fundamental basis of all the randomized trial. There is an equipoise in the scientific community we don't know if one treatment is better than the others. That's the fundamental aspect of randomized. So there's nothing better than the other before we start a treatment. At the end of a trial, you may find that they are useful, the treatment that you taught, or you may find that it's not useful. So it's at the beginning, nobody knows. If we knew, there was no point of doing a randomized trial.
Yeah, exactly. And in fact, indeed, only through randomization can we address those biases that we all have through our training or personal experiences. And you may even be biased by the last patient you operated on. So it's good to have a standardized approach. We get this question a lot by patients who are thinking about joining a trial, particularly, let's say, a drug trial. If I'm randomized to placebo or standard resection, does that mean I'm getting suboptimal care? What's your answer to that?
I think, first of all, when you do a randomized trial, we compare a conventional treatment to another treatment, which we don't know if it's better or not, but we think based on some preliminary either lab result or some biochemical things or some hypothetical benefit, maybe cost analysis benefit, it may be better. So it's all hypothetical. If every treatment we do comes at a cost, it's called safety. So we have to be very aware of the balance between the improvement in terms of what we call outcome, could be patient's well-being, and also the safety of the patient. And at the beginning, in none of these trials, we know as a scientific community, one is better than the other one. In fact, in a lot of trials, when we do randomized trial, we call it not superiority. We don't assign the trial to find the answer whether this is better treatment than the other. Sometimes we say we just want to know if treatment that is a new treatment is as good or not worse than the trial, not other treatment that we normally do. So it's not all about being better. And also there's no way of knowing at the beginning that one is better than the other one. So there's for us it's 50-50 at the beginning. Mm-hmm. Nobody gets a better treatment or worse treatment. They're all the same in our eyes. And there are a lot of layers of checkpoints, scientific checkpoint to make sure that this is happening, and they are comparable at the beginning, at least to the eye of the scientific community.
Correct. That's a very good point. So, for example, sometimes the new intervention probably has the same effect, but it's much cheaper. So from a societal perspective, everyone benefits more if the efficacy is at least the same. So at several points, we've talked about the importance of safety, the ethical aspects, make sure that everything's safe. And you've been through all the layers of protocol development, submission to the IRBs, talking to Health Canada, for example, all the regulatory bodies. Tell us about all the layers of protection that are there that hopefully can reassure patients that when they're enrolling into a trial, that we have taken all the steps to make sure that it's safe. Obviously, we can't foresee everything that can go wrong, but there's so many layers, and I would love to hear your perspective, particularly working in Canada.
I think that's true for, I think, anywhere in the world. There are some universal standard by the research community that is adhered across the whole world. I think safety of the patient is a center of all the studies, because everything is done to make the patient's care better. So the patient has to be safe, and that's the essential thing. And I think all the researchers, as you said, when you write the protocol, set up the protocol, this is in the back of your mind. The safety is an important part of every study in terms of outcome. How does the patient will do, and what are the different aspects of the potential side effects of any even foreseen or unforeseen potential side effects. So it has to be really laid out in detail in your protocol when you're writing. And as a scientist, when you write it, you know this is an important part, so you pay attention to make it as clear and as detailed as possible. And this is important because the funding agencies, they have a peer review process, very rigorous, and most of them are public. Mm-hmm. And they will look at every studies, especially randomized trial. And then one of the most important thing is the safety of the patient. So they will look at this safety aspect of the design of a trial and how the patients be exposed to conventional treatment versus more of what we call experimental or newer treatment, whether they're going to pose any additional risk, and what are the risks, and how is it being calculated, and what has been done to mitigate it. So the funding agencies, which is, as I said, is a peer review scientist, will not approve anything unless you're convinced that this is all comparable to conventional therapy in terms of risk. The other layer is when the study is approved by a funding agency to actually conduct a study. Every center that wants to enroll patient, they have their own central body of the research called Research Ethics Boards in Canada. I think it's like a different terminology in the US.
Institutional Research Board, IRB, yep.
Yeah. So we'll call it REB here. They have, again, an independent body. They'll look, their mandate is to protect the patients from any undue harm for the research. And then that's the main thing. And so they'll look at this critically, the proposal, and what are the checkpoints, how the patient's being protected, both in terms of safety and their privacy, and all the aspects that the patients are carrying. I think the other aspect of during the study, there is another independent scientific body called DSMB, or Data Safety Monitoring Board. There's a board that has a preset time to periodically check how the study is conducted and executed. And one of the important aspects of these checkpoints are safety. So the safeties are being checked either periodically at set point, or there are triggering signals, and then they assess those treatment triggering signal based on what's the safety or adverse effect in a community, the background community, and based on the study, how many of these events has happened in the study groups that has had the treatment intervention. So if it goes beyond a certain points, the Data Safety Monitoring Board will look at this conduct of study, and they will decide whether this is safe to continue or not. So safety has been many layers, from researchers, from funding body, from the research ethic boards in each hospital which are enrolling patients, and also DSMB. And also the patients are usually get well informed from beginning, and they will be constantly being informed of any changes that happens throughout the study to other patients. If it's important, they will be informed if something that is, we think it's important. So I think it has been well spelled out in the process of RCTs, or research or randomized controlled trials in anywhere in the world. And these safety things are embedded in the trials.
Yeah, absolutely. There was a time when, research was not so ethical, even as early as the 40s and 50s, but thankfully things have changed a little bit. So with all of this experience you've gained, I need some words of wisdom. A couple of questions for you on that. Any challenges you have faced on this path that you had not anticipated when first starting out?
The answer is, of course. No way you can anticipate. There's like a lot of challenges, a lot of surprises, a lot of mistakes. Some of them are silly. Some of them are, expected because you don't have experience. Some of them could have been avoided, but also comes with a lot of abundance of enjoyments and satisfactions and events that you really keep you going. Yeah, of course. I think this. I can't go through all the things that has been not been surprised and not the way you like it, but I think it shows that this is a long haul. You have to be dedicated. You have to really enjoy what you're doing. Don't be disappointed at this. This is a rule to having the blocks rather than an exception. You're going to have blocks one after the other until they're finishing this study. So you really have to be prepared for those challenges. But if you're persistent and you're enjoying it, and especially if you have some mentors along the way to help you to navigate through these difficult times, then there will be success. And the success is you achieve what you want, and then better patient care. You have an answer for something that is important to the patient because you felt, and that's how you start the question.
Yeah, absolutely. And so what is your advice for surgeons who are just getting started in their academic careers and they want to get a surgical trial going?
I think they have to be, as I said, they have to be really from the beginning, they have to be dedicated to what they have to be prepared that they are getting into something that is a long process. They have to be focused. I think the best thing is to find a mentor as a part of a partner in the study or just a supervisor. Be ready to have difficulties and get disappointment, and you have to have a very important to set a very good team from beginning. Team is very important, the key members of the team to allow you to support each other and rely on each other when you have trouble, and based on terms of expertise and also the manner and the connection, all those things are important. Setting up if you're a randomized trial, you want to do the multi-center, you really have to have a wide net of friends and colleagues and connections. So these are all important. You have to set it up before you start planning to these things. I say from my own experience, it takes much more time than when you think. From the time you think of a question, but until the time that you actually get the trial approved and going, it takes 20, 30, 40 times of iteration of writing a protocol, changing it. A lot of researchers, they have their opinion. It goes back to the funding agency. They have their opinion. A lot of back and forth. It takes almost as many years to write it properly and get it approved and then get it done. So almost the same amount of time. And when you start getting it done, amongst all the other things, it's very important to have patients are on your side and gets enrolled. And I think part of our job is to make sure they understand, they are comfortable that the research is done for them. It's not some black box game that we may have in the back. It's only purely for the care that we want to do better care for the patients, for them, and the next generation of patients could be any of our other human beings. So if we can relay that information and create that trust, then we can have enrollment of more patients. And that's one of the challenges we get in any randomized trial to get the patients to feel that way and get them. Yeah. I think they have to have fun with it, and good luck.
Yeah, exactly. And I think one of the most effective things that you've been good at doing is an interdisciplinary team of clinicians and patients, because, as surgeons, we may think, oh, this is a surgical trial, so we just need surgeons on the team. But there's so much to be learned from our ICU colleagues, our critical care, neuro-oncology, radiation oncology. So I think that's another key aspect. Won't you agree?
Yeah. I think the team is one of the most important component. The team makes you, you can go a certain amount of way by yourself, but you can go much farther when you have a team and a large group of people, and you can rely on each other. Of course, that's why we have a big team, as you know.
Yeah. Well, this was very informative. Thank you so much for your time, and I hope you have a great day.